Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's panel discussion on a topic that is both timely and crucial: interdisciplinary and translational research. We are fortunate to have a distinguished panel of experts with us, each bringing a unique insight into how interdisciplinary and translational research can shape the future. The panel discussion will be chaired and moderated by Professor Abhishek Ghosh, Dean, Faculty of Dharma Studies, Somaiya Vidyavihar University. Professor Ghosh is a distinguished scholar in Dharma Studies with nearly 2 decades of international experience in higher education and research. His work bridges diverse dharmic traditions while promoting critical inquiry and the relevance of these traditions in the modern world. We're indeed privileged to have him chair this panel discussion. Our eminent panelists include Professor Rajan Saxena, Founding Director, IIM Indore, and former Vice Chancellor of NMIMS, Professor Vivek Agarwal, Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Bombay, Dr. Achala Daneth, Director, Somaiya Institute for Research and Advanced Studies, and our internal expert is Professor Nitin Desai, Dean, Faculty of Science, Somaiya Vidyavihar University. I invite the chair and the moderator, Professor Abhishek Ghosh, and the respected panelists to kindly proceed to the dais for the panel discussion. A small note, following the discussion by the panelists, the floor will be open for questions, so we encourage all the participants to think about the exciting possibilities and challenges this field presents. Over to you, sir.
Good morning and welcome to the third day of our annual research meet at Somaiya Vidyavihar University. And I want to thank Professor Narayan Ketkar for tirelessly working to make this a great success and including me to serve as a moderator for this panel. When I read the bios of our distinguished panelists, I realized I'm standing among giants, and I am deeply grateful for this opportunity. Among us is Dr. Rajan Saxena, and we heard very briefly who he is. And I want to thank him for taking the time out to be here with us today to help us think about what interdisciplinary and translational research entails. So we have somebody from management. We also have Professor Vivek Agarwal from electrical engineering from IIT Bombay. And right there, you can see an interdisciplinary conversation forming. We also have Professor Achala Daneth, who I regularly interact with whenever I'm here. And I straddle 2 worlds. I serve here as the Dean of Faculty at Dharma Studies with flexible work arrangement, which also takes me to my work in the United States as the Director for the Institute for Vaishnava Studies. And there we bring together scientists and humanists to think about what interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity entails. And so I look forward to our conversation. Finally, we have our Dean of Science, Professor Nitin Desai, who's been a great colleague and who's been very helpful in pulling together this panel. And I also thank you for this opportunity for us to be here. Right? So the way this will flow is we will have our esteemed panelists give a 5 to 7 minute kind of free-flowing thoughts on what interdisciplinary and translational research entails. And then we have a set of questions that we've shared with them. We have a general conversation about it, and then we'll open the floor up for our audiences to ask any questions, and I'll moderate that conversation. And then in about less than 90 minutes, we'll begin to wrap up, and at 90 minutes, we'll have a hard stop. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate your presence, and thank you to our panelists. Right? So I first call Professor Saxena to come and address. Yes, we'll get you started, sir. First 5-7 minutes, we'll have that, and then the conversation.
All right. No issues. Good morning to all of you, and thank you very much, Professor Ghosh, for your very brief kind of introduction and asking me to really start off this whole session. Well, let me at the outset make a very strong, very clear-cut kind of a disclosure. I have been away from research for a couple of years, especially post-retirement, but have not left the world of academics and also not left the world of industry. And so therefore, I'll try and understand this whole issue of interdisciplinary research and translational research from a very different kind of a perspective before I really get on to some of the specifics when we really get into a question-answer session, which was there. And I start, this is a question that we have been asking and deliberating even at the time when I was in NMIMS, as to what should be the direction of the research. What kind of a research we should be doing? This was often the kind of a debate and a discussion that would pursue or that would go on, not just merely among the faculty or for that matter, let us say, the deans, but also from the point of view of, or also in the board of management and our, let's say, the various management committee meetings. Why should we be doing this research? Of what use is this research? Are we doing this research for the purposes of just simply publications or patents that we are going to be getting? Of what use would that kind of a patent and publication would be? That was the question that was always there. And when did that question come over to me? Was there? Why did that question really arise? And this particularly holds good for many of us in higher education when we are talking about it from the point of view of the funding, research funding itself. The issue that comes up is that you have limited resources. Should I spend that kind of resource on infrastructure, on teaching, on doing something else, or on research? But the challenge is that of making that research useful to the user, useful to the industry, useful to the society. And if that research isn't useful, then in that case, it simply remains an esoteric kind of a research in some of the words that some of the people did talk about it. Though I don't necessarily subscribe to that view of an esoteric research. But certainly, that led us into the thinking that when we are looking at our research money, a research fund, for example, how much of that we should really direct it into some of the basic research that our School of Sciences, for example, was doing, or maybe our engineering school was doing, or it was happening in our pharmacy school, and how much of the research money that we really put in is towards the application research. But when we get into application, what was truly needed was to really continue within the discipline, or do we really get out of our discipline itself? And we realized that there was a limitation to just simply the discipline-specific research. And that is where I come to, and this is where I see the kind of a value of interdisciplinary research. I think, to me, the true knowledge rests at the intersection of the disciplines. It isn't just simply in the discipline, four walls of the discipline. The four walls of the discipline will help you to create a new thought, a new body of, or let's say a new thinking direction. But if you're really looking at something which is going to change or which is going to influence the developments in the industry, which is going to lead towards the developments in the society, or which is going to create a kind of another policy, for example, then in that case, I think there is no other way but to really step out of your comfort level, of the discipline comfort level, and try and work very closely with the other disciplines. The science, technology, and management, when they combine together, they have the potential to really change the direction of the society. They have the potential to change the direction of the industry, and we have seen that. Whether this is in the context of AI or this happens to be in the today that we are talking about it, I mean, or Chat GPT, for example. If the Chat GPT, whatever the kind of a development that happened in terms of the algorithms and everything that got developed in the engineering colleges, I think if that would not have really been easy to use, if there was no kind of an application that was there, I don't think they could have really hit 1 million users in just 5 days kind of a time period. That is where the role of the interdisciplinarity comes in. But the next part is that of this one is not just merely interdisciplinary, where the management and the science and the technology get together. But the other part of it is, if you look at it, is in terms of the application. And that is where I think many of us today are lagging in our universities and in our institutions. Translational, ability to translate whatever you're doing in your own discipline, whatever you're doing, being picked up by the industry and try and seeing whether it is going to be usable. Whether this is in the world of management or it is in the world of, let's say, the technology, or it is in the world of sciences, name it. And I'll just stop over here by just giving one example. And an example that I just picked up as I was coming over. I just asked Meta AI to tell me what are the research priorities at Meta. And here is something which they just came up with, something very interesting for the panel and also for all of you who are the researchers. Please just spend some little time in terms of looking at it. What it said is, it's research on building technologies. So first thing is, it's obviously it's a tech company. So it is in the world of building technologies that help people connect. So look at the application. So I'm not developing the technology only for myself, only for my kind of a self-actualization or something which, let's say, the WhatsApp or let's say the promoters and others would have thought about it. But that's going to help people connect, find communities. Today within nuclear families, finding communities has become very important. With whom do you really relate? So the virtual communities which are there, finding communities, and besides that, grow businesses. So look at the three parts. So the research that Meta does, and the research in which Meta is interested, is really looking at it from the point of view of whether it is going to help connect people, whether it is going to help them find communities and grow business processes. And therefore, for this very purposes, Meta says, we don't do it ourselves, but we do a collaborative research. So it says, a collaborative process across different departments helps ensure that research focuses on areas that align with Meta's mission and values, and that research is conducted in a responsible and ethical manner. So that's where your social part comes in. So, ladies and gentlemen, more about it as we really go forward. But I must say that today our challenge and where India is today needing much more kind of a work is in the area of interdisciplinary and translational research. How would that happen? What are the kind of challenges that are there? Let's just spend some little time as we really progress in the discussion. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much.
Professor Agarwal to share his thoughts.
So very good morning to the distinguished people on the dais, the distinguished gathering here. I am Vivek Agarwal, and I am a professor of electrical engineering at IIT Bombay. This is a very interesting topic, and I want to thank Professor Santosh Narayan Khedkar for this opportunity that I can participate in such an important discussion. After Professor Rajan सक्सेना's comments and views, I think nothing much remains as far as the definition of the interdisciplinary research or the translational research is concerned. If there was a need to have a discussion on interdisciplinary research and translational research, if there ever was a need, then I think this is today that we need it the most. And it's really I really appreciate that this particular topic has been picked up. Now, interdisciplinary research is not something which is new. You know, if you see all the major projects in the world, you know, right from the making of the atom bomb or the aeroplane or the rockets or whatever, we have seen people coming together from different disciplines and specializations and coming up, you know, whether it was the discovery of penicillin or whether it was some other, and now the AI, as you can see, there's a lot of different people from the different fields. They have now come together and you can see what is being created. Good or bad, we would know with time, but something very marvelous is being created that we can see. Most of the time, interdisciplinary research doesn't happen because people, they don't interact much with each other. So for example, if I can give you an example of a campus or of a research life at IIT Bombay, where I come from, most of the time, you know, we don't even know what our colleagues are doing in the other departments. And whenever there is occasion to have a discussion, when people come and present their work, then many times it has been observed that you get very good ideas where you can really collaborate with your colleagues, other people, and come up with some very nice interdisciplinary research. And please remember that today the internet is very strong, and I don't know whether COVID has really done anything good to anyone, but this is one good thing that COVID has done to us, is that it has brought the world together. Now you have so many people who are actually seeing each other and having online conferences, and even the entire courses are being taught currently online, in online mode. And of course this started during COVID, but some people have continued even after that. So this is really a very good opportunity for the international scientific and the research community to collaborate. So this really gives us that platform where people can do that. As Professor Rajan Saxena rightly said, there are many good inventions, there are many good things that are being done individually by many of us, but they go unnoticed, nor they really end up serving the society because they don't see the light of the day. Nobody knows who is doing what. So translational research is also equally important, and it also synchronizes very well with the government's plan, like for example, Make in India and things like that. Our ideas, we've seen in the past, many of us, we know that from the history, many of the things which were done by us, but unfortunately, for example, in the field of medicine, so whatever was done maybe thousands of years ago, there was no documentation and it was not really translated into reality. So that is why many of these very nice ancient techniques, they have not really, people are not aware of them. So many of the advanced techniques today, they can be completely overshadowed if some of those old techniques were known to us, or we had documented them, or we had marketed them, and things like that. So I thank again the university for giving me this opportunity. The panel chair, Professor Ghosh, thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to learning a lot of things from all the people here and going back richer when I go back to the institute in the evening or in the afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal, for your comments. Could we have Achala ma'am? Absolutely, whatever you're comfortable with.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, thanks to Professor Narayan Khedkar for including me in this panel. From the name here, you can realize that I'm pulled in at the last moment. So I'm sorry I don't have the questions, but I'll still try to make best use of this opportunity to share my views. I think further to what the two dignitaries have talked about in interdisciplinary and translational, I would like to give you my own practical experience of how things work in an industry, because a majority part of my professional journey has been in the industry. Let's take an example of interdisciplinary research. In an industry, when problems come, when your market is telling you that this is a need, the need doesn't come to you as a physics problem or a chemistry problem or a biology problem. It comes to you as an unmet need. This is a need that needs to be solved. And then you have to pull in all the right resources to address that need. I'll give you a very simple example. For any paint, because most of these paints, especially which you use in homes, are water-based paints, you have to add an ingredient called as a biocide. Now, what is a biocide? Because these are all water-based paints, there is a very increasing tendency to have bacteria in it, and therefore you want to ensure that this paint remains stable for as long as it has its shelf life. Now, this biocide is actually a molecule. So it is designed and developed by somebody with a chemistry background. But can this molecule then come out as a product with only the chemistry knowledge? No. You need somebody with a physics and analytical capability to really tell you, characterize how that molecule is. And most importantly, you need a microbiologist to do the studies to tell you whether this biocide is going to be effective. So for the microbiologists here, most of you will be doing the studies on zone of inhibition, etc. So it tells you how this biocide is effective against the organisms which you will likely encounter when this paint is applied. So this is a very practical example of an industry where you develop a molecule by a chemist. It is characterized by maybe people with physics and analytical experience, and it is actually assessed and evaluated by a person who has a microbiology experience. So this is a perfect example of an interdisciplinary approach to addressing a need. Let's come to translational. Here again, I will give you some practical examples. So, as they have rightly said, whatever research you do, its maximum benefit is if it can be applied to address the needs of the market and the society. And according to me, in my opinion, translational research is an economical necessity today. Because the amount of funds and the resources you need for basic research, the more and more applications you find for that basic research, So it's an economical necessity. So in the industry where I was before, we had developed something called as a surfactant. Now this surfactant is basically, in very layman terms, it's something which will bring oil and water together, like a soap. But the application of a surfactant is very varied. So we developed a surfactant. So our scientist, who was a surfactant scientist from ICT, developed a surfactant molecule. Did it end there? No. We had various divisions. So we were a central research, and we catered to the business needs of maybe the paints industry or maybe the home care, the personal care. Everywhere you need surfactants. Now this one molecule was being tailored to achieve all the properties. So if it's going to be used as a laundry detergent, the same molecule could be put in a formulation where it worked as a laundry detergent. This exactly same molecule could be applied or put in a formulation which was needed for a beauty application. And this same molecule was used as a lubricant for plastics. And these are just 3 examples, there are 5 more. So a company which is investing money or resources in research to develop this molecule, we took almost 2 years to develop a molecule. But just imagine the number of products that were developed with this molecule just by tweaking formulations or by putting it in a particular application. And that is how an industry or any company tries to invest the research and then leverage what has been developed. And according to me, this cannot be possible without translational research. And therefore, coming now to our university level, I feel that the more and more academia interacts with industry, we will be able to translate whatever work we are doing here, which may be at a technology readiness level of 3, 4, whatever, to take it to a level of 8 where it can be commercialized.
Professor Desai?
Honorable eminent speakers on the dais, deans, my dear colleagues. This concept of basic research to applied research to translational research and inculcating this kind of culture in our university, I think put forward by our Honorable Vice Chancellor. He wanted to understand what is translational research from such experts. What happens, sir, at the university level, what I feel, research is governed by the regulatory bodies. What UG says, accordingly university follows, and accordingly our teachers follow, and they end up with competing with the publication numbers. So what happens to publications when we write publication? Normally we choose the best of the observations and we publish for the best of the journals. But sometimes we miss something important which has applied application and which can see the light in the market. That is also possible. So this ARM is happening at our university from last 2 years, sir. So where all the students from all the disciplines, faculties come together and present, so that they are not now working in silos or compartment. So everybody knows what they are doing and they can shake hand with each other and start the actually collaborative and translational research. This is the idea of this ARM. For me, normally my students, I don't pull them in my specialty, sir. I tell them, go in the field and find out what is the society's need. And there you should invest your next 3 years, 5 years of research and do that basic to applied and to the translational research. This is how it happens. Normally, by definition, sir has already mentioned, but translational research is like what people normally call is like bench to bed. But normally I say it is from lab to the field. It is from lab to the market. It is from lab to fulfill the requirement of the society. Your intervention should at least be helpful to somebody to improve the quality of the life of the patient or the person or the society. That is most important. So the translational research can happen in various areas, as sir mentioned, from AI to agriculture to healthcare and so on. End of the day, whatever we do, that is improving the quality of the life of these people. That is most important. So here, as at the beginning I mentioned, sir, because our research is governed by this 2000, when it was people were publishing only ISS and ISBN. So many journeys came out like mushrooming. Then the other norm came, it should be in UGC care. Now later on came only Scopus Index, and now they say no necessary to publish research paper at PhD level. So I'm worried what will happen to our research. Again, people will go only for submitting the thesis and fulfilling the criteria of thesis submission. So that should not happen actually, because we are investing our important precious time of our life, 3 years, 4 years, our teachers, manpower, a lot of money. So whatsoever you do, at least something, some information should be generated, and that knowledge should be taken forward somebody. If possible, not in that particular period, it can taken by somebody else and to be taken to the next level. So this is how it is going to be, and that is what the idea of this ARM, where we all come together. Let's know, understand what is happening in our different departments, schools, in our university, join hands together, and at least, no doubt, the startups are coming, but developing a technology is different satisfaction. Normally, sir, I say to my teachers, because teachers working in the university doing basic research, they are financially malnourished. But if you do translational research, definitely it will fulfill the requirement of your vitamin M also. So that is the most interesting part of this translational research. Thank you very much.
I thank our esteemed panelists, and I'll offer a very brief reflection on interdisciplinary and translational research, and then open up some questions, and you can volunteer to answer those questions. And I want to premise the next part of our conversation by saying this, kind of telling you a story. That about 10 years back, I ended up as a tenure-line professor at a university in the Michigan State system. And the college I was in was called the Brooks College of Interdisciplinary Studies. And I had no idea what that meant. So I went to my faculty mentor and said, "Can you tell me how you do things around here?" And he gave me this really thick book that looked more like a weapon and said, "Read this." And I went through it, and it was, kind of pretty boring. But then, what I was doing is, when I read, to be able to focus, I usually have some music in the background. How many of you do that? I had some jazz music going on in the background, and it somehow clicked in my head that interdisciplinary research is like the jazz of research. That there has to be discipline first, like you have to learn a set of disciplines, and then when you have mastered it, then you can break the laws of those music and create the jazz of research. So in my brain, the dots just joined. And it's like, that was an aha moment. And then after 10 years later, as I came to Somaya Vidya Vihar University, and my association with Somaya goes back about 18 years, but I've joined recently as the Dean of Dharma Studies. When the Sanskriti building came up, I couldn't say no. And since I came here, I have been among brilliant minds, and I have regular conversations with the Dean of Music. And we think about how can we use or do research projects around music and therapy. I have regular conversations with Dr. Raman, and we think about what is mindful leadership, where the stuff we do at Dharma Studies comes together with the stuff we do in the business school. I'm beginning to have conversations with Professor Devi. When we think about languages, how do we decenter the golden yardstick of Europe, where all our sciences and the humanities and the social sciences are measured against what Europe has accomplished in the last 400 years. And in that, I echo the interdisciplinary research of one of my mentors at the University of Chicago, Deepesh Chakrabarty. He wrote a very famous book called Provincializing Europe, and I encourage you to read that. So as we go forward, I'd like to ask our panelists here, what do you think are the defining characteristics of not just interdisciplinary, but multidisciplinary research? And how can that translate into something more utilitarian, that's what we are calling translational research? So anybody who wants to reflect on that question, please take the microphone and enlighten us.
Let me start by just responding to what you just said, Professor Ghosh. I think this whole world of interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity has, we need to really get back to the very question, what makes an individual? What is it, as was talked about by Dr. Achla, that when a problem comes to the industry, when there is a problem in the industry, it is not defined in any discipline specific. It's a problem of the market, it's a problem of the efficiency, it's a problem of the cost, it's a problem of the, let's say, why a certain kind of a situation is happening. Unfortunately, and this is what now I look at it when I go back in time, unfortunately, we in India, post 1990, have tended to look at education only from a very narrow kind of a perspective, a disciplined perspective only. And as was said by Professor Agarwal, a department doesn't talk to another department. So where is the question of interdisciplinarity? Where is the question of multidisciplinarity? Let me share an example of something which was very interesting, and again from our kind of a experience. We were creating a school of, and back in NMIMS, for example, we were no different. The management school faculty would not really talk to the engineering faculty, for example. Yeah? We are the gods. The engineering faculty said that you guys are too generalistic. Right? We are the guys who develop. We are the guys who really make things with our own hands. And the scientists lived in their own world. The humanities, the social sciences group in our liberal arts kind of a school, these were the poor cousins to all the disciplines. I must say that. So no matter what was there, the fact was they would go to another department. I would ask, let's say, a political scientist to go and teach a course in the School of Law, for example. So he would go, but neither the law faculty nor the law students really saw that kind of a value. Or in the economics, for example. Now I wonder, and this is where when we started talking about it, can you think of talking about the laws or let us say the economics without understanding the political system of a nation or of a society? I don't think so. So when we start asking these kinds of questions, possibly the subject makes a sense. But unfortunately, again, when we enter, a political science faculty would enter the class, he would start with Plato or with Aristotle, or let's say the philosophy professor would enter, and everybody would get switched off. The answer is not there. The question is, yes, you know Aristotle. For example, a philosophy teacher would know what is Aristotle. Or let's say somebody who has specialized in the world of Indian philosophy. And let's say to understand Indian philosophy, you need to really understand the language. Because much of the Indian philosophy, when you start looking at it, is written in so many scriptures and so many kinds of languages that are there. Unless and until you know the language, it is difficult for you to be able to relate to that. But you start talking this to let's say, a 17-year-old kid, talk about Sanskrit as a language, and you will have empty benches sitting over, empty benches. But the moment you convert that into a dialogue, into something which you pick it up from real life, and then relate it back to the subject that you are teaching, maybe either in any kind of a field that you are really talking about it, it makes a sense. So to my mind, I think the irony has been that we have for a long time looked at it only from a discipline specific. The NEP is forcing us to go beyond. Dr. Desai, you raised a very interesting part of the UGC, right? The scopus and the kind of journals and let me also mention not only UGC but also the ranking and the accreditation agencies are pushing us into that kind of a direction. That is the limitation. But let's look at it. Which paper gets published in Nature? Who gets the Nobel Prize today? Are they the pure scientists? Which is where I think we need to be spending some little time on. So interdisciplinary, I think first thing is, and the translational, or let's say that the multidisciplinary, the first thing is to create that kind of a culture that I am willing to learn from others, and two, that other disciplines together can really enrich the classroom interaction. Because the essence is there. Once you are able to create that kind of an enrichment in the class, the interest in the research would be started with. That's what my kind of a limited understanding is.
Thank you, Professor. Big hand. Thank you. I just want to echo what you said. I have some experience in British Academy, in the American Academy, and now I'm kind of foraying into the Indian Academy, and I see a common thread that you pointed out, that professors in particular disciplines are not willing to talk to each other. And I wonder the role of subjectivity in that, right? But I also want to inquire, and others please chime in, about successful examples of where people from across intellectual borders engaged with one another to create good research. And I can start by saying that, I work very closely with the University of Florida faculty. And, one of the things that they produced is what we call Gatorade, right? And it came out of a need for the sports people who are getting dehydrated and fainting because of Florida heat. And so the people in nutrition, people in chemistry, people, everybody got together to say, hey, here's a real world problem where sports people are fainting because of the heat. We need to keep them hydrated. Let's figure this out. And then they created Gatorade, they commercialized it, and now it's one of the biggest, any American gas station you walk into will have a Gatorade, right? Yeah, Covishield. Yes, yes.
And the work that the pharmaceutical companies did, along with the universities in UK, for example, or in the US,
Yes.
for example, the whole lot of work that our people did, and some of the companies did with Oxford, for example,
Right.
where the Covishield got developed, primarily because to be able to handle the pandemic, the COVID. I think this is in history, this is the first kind of an example where industry and academia worked together and came up with a vaccine in such a short period of time, primarily only to deal with only one problem, which was the public health issue challenge, which was there.
Such a great example. Thank you so much. I'd invite Professor Desai, Professor Danai, Professor Agarwal to chip in and maybe share any thoughts you have on successful interdisciplinary research or translational research.
So to begin with, actually, you said multituditional. There are so many such examples where many institutions are involved. Whatever product we see in the market, whether it is a electronic. Am I audible now? So best example would be any new drug, as we mentioned about the vaccine. But normally development of drug, because many of my colleagues, they are also working in identifying new drugs from the marine source or natural sources or some plants or so and so. So from taking that from drug, that is, I think, proof of concept first development happens in the lab. That is basic creating the knowledge. A particular compound works against a particular cell line cancer or some antibacterial activities. And then it goes to the at a different level, it's clinical studies at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then commercialization. So this span is almost like 10 to 15 years for drug, whatsoever drug you see in the market. This was the only expedite vaccine which came in within the 1 year because all government, all the stakeholders were involved and eagerly everybody wanted it should come in the market and give the relief to the community. That was the very important thing. So when it comes to multi-institutional, lot of stakeholders should be involved. Normally researchers, they do work in silos. So it should be always with the help of the industry, the investors and the users should also be part of this translational research. Now when it's come to again drug discovery research, just there was a report from USA, and USA for the first time they established the National Institute of Translational Research in 1991, and they studied 100 companies which were involved in the translational research, and they developed some 100 and plus products. Out of which 100, only 10 products they could go into the market. So 90% products, what we do, whatever work we do in the lab, they normally fail in the lab itself to prove themselves. When they get to clinical trials further in phase 1, phase 2, out of which again 50% they fail. And mostly in final clinical trials, another 50% they fail in the market. And then finally, so we should have a lot of patience, and whatsoever today products we see in the market, they are actually translational research where a lot of different discipline peoples are involved, whether it analytical chemistry, whether it animal studies, whether human studies, and then taking to market and commercialization when management people are involved. I will give the one example of so many shampoos today in the market. As a scientist, I will say shampoo doesn't work only for cleaning and removing the dirt, but shampoo with proteins, shampoo with egg proteins. So here it comes the translational part done by the marketing people of management, how to grab the emotional aspect of the people, and because we know normally we apply egg for the hair for nourishment. But egg and our skin will not absorb anything. It will be externally, it will be washed out immediately. There is not going to benefit for me. But for common man, it is going to help and they will have very nice, healthy, long hairs. There it comes again, it's one kind of translation. Another example I'll give I'm taking the name of the product. It's Fair and Lovely with DNA. You must have seen, everybody must have seen the advertise on the bus stands. DNA strand was going inside the cell. For me, it is going to cause cancer. It is transgenic cell will create it. But for common man, DNA is master molecule. It is going to make me very white. So somebody has played that role to advertise and fool the people. So this is how from here scientists they fail miserably because they are not able to convince the community to how to translate their product into market. So here we need hands with the management people also. Now people from social science will think whether translational science we do or not. They also do involve a lot of translational research from social sciences. In India, sir, for the first time we have seen tobacco chewing is dangerous for human health. It comes on the screen, it comes on TV, it comes on the packet. Now the packet, it is almost half of the cigarette packet is covered with the warning with photographs. That is the recommendation of IIPS, Indian Institute of Population Science, who do a lot of such kind of research. So here it is, you are giving warning and that message, somebody has developed that nicotine is carcinogenic. And then social science people have taken it larger to the community and creating the warning in the community to avoid smoking and chewing tobacco. So this is how people from different areas, different disciplines are also involved in this multi-institutional research or translational research. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Did you want to? No, please go ahead. One more, and then.
So I'll give you an example of which is still not fully there about recycling of plastic waste. There was a phase where everybody was saying plastics are bad. For me, it's not plastics which are bad. It's the way we are using it that is bad. But some example of how translational and multidisciplinary approaches help to address one of the problems. one of the very big industry groups in India who mainly deals with polyesters. And this polyester was being used for all the bottles. And there were so many bottles lying all over the place. And that issue was addressed in a very simple manner by putting some kind of machines in different locations which could crush the plastic bottles. And those plastic bottles were then all the crushed material which was used now has gone into textiles and many other places. And I think there it involved engineers and involved many other disciplines which could help to do that. The second thing which is which is the need for India is about sorting the plastic waste. Because especially abroad, you do have very regular mechanisms of sorting the plastic waste at source, but you don't have that in India. And when we were working with one of our, because I was working in a Swiss company, we were working with our Swiss counterparts, and they came up with a very, very simple solution to sort the plastic. They used a very simple infrared sensor which only detects functional groups in a molecule. So polyethylene bottles had different polyethylene caps of the bottles, which are mainly PE or polypropylene, have a very different structure. Polyethylene terephthalate, which is the PET, has a very different structure. And a simple IR can detect this. So all the material passed through a belt, a conveyor belt, which had an IR sensor at the end. And depending upon what group it was, it would toss that particular plastic item into that particular bucket. It was such a simple technique which was developed. The concept was developed by academia, by a university, but it was really made possible, economically feasible by our company. And I think this is the power of translational, multidisciplinary approach, which really needs to come out, which is going to help the society.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As we move forward with our panel conversation, there are three areas, and not necessarily in a particular organized order, that we could collectively address. The first is education and skill development. As we said, interdisciplinarity requires that we first become masters of certain disciplines before we play the jazz, of our research. And so, given the time it takes for someone to master a particular set of skills, to be credentialed in a field, to be trusted as an authority, takes time. So, how do we address that challenge? That's the first question. The second is, disciplines are created such because there are funding issues, right? Like every department at the end of the day has to have a budget, they have to, be accountable. And so the structures of our universities that are rooted in the European or Western models don't necessarily translate into that kind of a free-flowing, curiosity-driven, problem-solving research, right? So how do we balance, the cause of, alleviating human suffering and uplifting people with the institutional structures within which we have to function? And then the third question that comes up is the question of research ethics. Each discipline has their own, questions of research ethics. In medicine, you have IRB boards. In the humanities, you don't have that. You don't deal with statistical data. You deal with qualitative data, right? So when you bring people together, there are different ethical considerations depending on different disciplines. How do you address the ethical concerns, across the disciplines? So 1, skill development; 2, institutional considerations; and 3, the question of research ethics. How would you kind of reflect on those 3 areas? And, any one that you want to pick up and reflect on, the floor is yours.
I would actually, I need your permission to make another couple of comments. See, the problem of interdisciplinary or the multidisciplinary research and then the translational component. I think one of the major issues that we are facing is that we have a lack of interaction between industry and academia. And because of that, I think many of us, most of us maybe, have done PhDs. Okay, we are all PhD. And if you remember, when you were starting your PhD, the major issue that we had was how to select a good problem to work on. Now, a difference that I have found when I was studying in America and in our country, the difference is that because industry and academia are not interacting that much, the problems that we start working on are all hypothetical. And they are really not realistic problems. I can promise you that if you work on a realistic problem, the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary nature will automatically come in, because if you want to deal with any real problem, you will have to deal with various things which cannot be handled by just one person. So if industry is taking interest in your work, then not only that you end up doing good work, you end up doing more realistic work, you also have a scope for this work to be useful to the society via the industry, because industry will eventually commercialize it and it will reach the various parts of the society. Only thing is that the cost and other things may be determined by the industry, which may not be that suitable to the society, to the common man. But those things can be worked around. The other thing is about the funds, the lack of funds. Many people think that if we go for interdisciplinary research, the funds would be a problem. From where the funds will come, how, you have different sets of things going on. I have a feeling that if we have more interaction with industry and if we have more support from our parent institutes and from the government, I think we can really overcome some of these issues. So my feeling is that we should think in these directions if we want to have interdisciplinary research as well as we want to have translational research, which can take it to society. So that's my take on this. I just wanted to make this comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Excellent points.
Let me just sort of respond to the question, the part that you talked about it, Professor Ghosh, in terms of, each discipline having its own set of rules, its own set of boundaries, and therefore, this kind of a path, which is that, look, what I'm doing is a purist kind of a thought. It's a purist thought. I come from the world of management. I understand the world of management. I understand the world of economics. I understand the world of industry. I'll keep myself away from science, technology, and the rest of the other things. I'll get others to really talk about it. I also understand the institution. I also understand the discipline and the discipline part of it. I think time has come when we start looking at this, as I said earlier also, we need to define the purpose of education. What is the purpose of education? What is it that we are doing? Are we there just simply to be imparting the knowledge to the student, and the knowledge is what I know, and that is what I'm going to be delivering? Or if that is not the knowledge, that is information. When does that information becomes useful? When you are really talking about the issues in the economy, issues in this environment, issues in this society, and then start talking about it from that kind of perspective. And therefore, to my mind, you start challenging the limitation of the discipline. We were establishing a school of economics at NMIMS back in 2010. The traditional kind of a model was that we would be having the BA Economics Honors kind of a model, which is what was typically the Sri Ram College of Commerce, or for that matter, let us say, Bombay University model, and any other Madras School of Economics, or anybody else. If you take a look at it, it's been a traditional model. There was a view that should we continue to really talk about it, economics, in the way by which This is the architecture of the program has been in this kind of a direction. Only talk about only subjects in economics. So economic development, international economics, Indian economy, welfare economics, whatever the way that we talk about it. Or do we go a little forward and start breaking the disciplines? And what was the model that was available to us? We looked at the London School of Economics. And interestingly, what we found, you say that you have looked at the British academics, you have worked in the British academics. What we found was something interesting, that here is a program that isn't just pure simply economics, but it gets into the question, into the part, why economics? For whom economics? Why and for whom is the economics? And when you start asking this question, these two questions, just simply, why and for whom, believe me, the answers start coming to you. And whatever we did, whether bringing in political science or bringing in sociology, bringing in anthropology over there, or bringing in the world of the regulations there, the legal framework there, these are not subsidiary courses. These are the main courses. So a student who was really doing it was not just studying, and it was not that he was not studying economics. He had to go through the econometrics. He had to go through the quantitative modelings. He had to go through the behavioral economics. He had to go through the economic theory. He had to learn the principles of law, the law of demand and supply. But understanding it from the perspective of why and for whom. I think that is where we require, at an institutional level, is a new paradigm of development. As we evolve, and some of the, for example, in the business schools, why go anywhere? Mechanical science and mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, if you don't talk to each other, possibly it is also because you are all in a different buildings or in different kind of floors in the same building. Although that could be in the IIT kind of a context, which is there, or in any kind of a large campus. But what happens in a management school? The faculty is sitting there. The finance faculty doesn't talk to, let us say, the marketing faculty. The finance and marketing faculty doesn't talk to the HR faculty. So, today in the business schools, now, there's a new organization structure that is today emerging. Doing away with all these departments. There is no marketing, there is no finance, there is no HR. You are a management faculty. And therefore, if, let us say, a course in consumer behavior is being taught, it will not be very surprising to see faculty from economics also coming and teaching a part of the consumer behavior course along with the marketing faculty. Or a faculty from the behavioral sciences coming in a course in consumer behavior and teaching about psychology and sociology of consumer behavior. When that starts happening, I think automatically the marketing and the behavioral science faculty or marketing and economics faculty start talking to each other. I think the essentiality is in terms of breaking these kinds of barriers which have been created. And I must say, industrial revolution that we saw led to some of these kinds of things. But the Industry 4.0 is telling us, no, look at it in a holistic manner. That's what I look at it.
So I'll address the 3 points that you talked about. One is skill, the second is the institution, and the third is the ethics. Right? So where skill goes, I think that the day and age where we are all living in. As far as we are alive, we will have to keep learning. I struggle when I see my mother-in-law struggling with, operating the mobile phone. Many times I feel I should teach her some things, but she's at a stage now where she cannot learn. And I know it's very important for her. I try my best. And it really worries me sometimes that what is going to happen when we grow older, because the pace at which this whole thing is growing, I think without keeping ourselves agile and having the willingness and the ability to learn is going to be absolutely paramount. If you see the education structure and how we are assessing students, and I've come back to academia after many, many years, how is our education structure, structured? Do we really assess people or students for their willingness to learn new things? We assess them for their in that subject. So our exam paper, whatever, is based on what is the structure, what is the course, what are the modules being taught. But I would really like to encourage or open this up, these thoughts. Can faculty also start evaluating students on their willingness to learn new concepts? So give them some assignments which will, they will have to move beyond what is given in their structure and evaluate them on their willingness to learn. In industry, if you want to go from one to the next level, they will not see whether you have the knowledge of what is going to take to, deliver to the next level, but they see whether you have the potential that if you are placed in, like if you're a manager or a senior manager, do you have the potential to learn what is needed to deliver as a successful senior manager or as a general manager? So therefore, throughout your life, you are going to need to learn new skills, whether the skills are in leadership, whether the skills are in your particular subject. And therefore, I think what is really needed is your willingness and ability to learn new things. So I think that is something which is very, very important if you have to keep skilling and reskilling yourself in whatever discipline or whatever job role you are. That is the first thing. So I think there we can do a lot of things, and I don't think that UGC or AICT or any structure is going to be an impediment there. I think it is up to us to decide, up to the faculty to decide what are the parameters on which we are going to evaluate our students. It is also important for deans or whatever to expand or adapt this to your own faculty. Are we giving them some new tasks, and are they really coming forward on their own, or are they doing it because somebody has told them to do? So that is a part on skill, and I think there's a lot that we can ourselves do. The second thing is about institutions. In my 1.5 year here, I have seen that when I interact with a lot of faculty or staff, everybody keeps telling me that, no, we are bound by the UGC has said this, etc. But in my opinion, if we really want to do something, we can break those barriers and come together and find a solution where we sort of, find a way to become successful without, without going against what is given. So I think it's UGC guidelines or whatever, many times, as per my experience, we're using it if you don't want to transcend things and come up with a solution. If we really decide that we want to come up with a solution and address this need, I don't think really there are such strict rules that we can't really go about. And the third is about ethics and integrity. I know that in PhD, in the first semester, there is a mandatory course about research publication ethics. But according to me, ethics is a part of your behavior, which is inculcated as you're growing up. And have any one of you seen a person who is absolutely ethical from 9 to 5, but after 5 p.m., ethics goes for a toss? Has anybody seen such a person? Ethics is what you are. Ethics is what is ingrained in your DNA. And I think the concept and the significance of ethics has to be inculcated from school. I think PhD or rules ethics in research is just one part of it. If you start developing ethical people, ethical children, ethical students, I think we will not need something which is ethics in research, is my very honest take on ethics.
Thank you.
A good point that you made, Dr. Achla, in terms of the ethics, and I'll just quickly respond. Yes, there's no doubt about it that it's more personal. But when we get down towards some of the disciplines, there are some very specific kind of ethical codes that are there. For example, in the pharma industry, for example, or let's say in the area of biological sciences and the whole lot of research that happens, for example. There are some very specific kind of guidelines which are there. Whether this is, and by and large, this is that with regard to the, let's say, the safety of the individual which is there. I think the answer is also to look at it from the point of view of the interdisciplinary committee on the code of ethics in research. Just as we are talking about interdisciplinary courses being taught, there is a need today at an institutional level to think in terms of an interdisciplinary committee on code of ethics, which could then give the confidence to the industry that, look, what I'm going to be giving will remain, will really follow a certain kind of a ethical code, which is there. That's one part. The second part of it is to look at it also from some of the examples that are there, for example. Some more examples. At a structural level, there is today a need to create a very distinctive interdisciplinary research center where people from across the disciplines can come and talk to each other. And certainly, as Dr. Agarwal said, I think there's a need to really look at and start from the industry itself. Let industry start from the dialogue with the industry. An example that comes up to my mind is when I was visiting, for example, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, the Beekman Center for Interdisciplinary Research, which has been established there, has scientists working from their engineering college, sciences, management, and even from the social sciences areas. Some of the outstanding research is in the area of LED, for example, which is one of the more recent research which was taken up by GE. And GE was interested in looking at it more from the point of view of the efficiency, the cost, and the kind of emissions and the environment that was there. Now, that Beekman Center today is an example of where the future could really lies for many of us today. Especially when we are caught in the brick and mortar kind of buildings that we have created and which really prevent people from walking over from one department to another. That's how I look at it.
Thank you so much. Professor Lisa, do you have any comments?
Maybe I can ponder upon a little bit about the skill, because ethics is more already been talking about. See, what we are following the education system when it comes to skills. Till today, we are following the Cambridge education system, like a degree, botany, zoology, microbiology, then BA, BCom and all. But new education policy which talks about multidisciplinary, student has option to choose. For me, what normally consider, what basic knowledge you have gained at your graduation level, that is actually you built your base to do multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary research. Because subject knowledge doesn't change, whether a person who is coming from a microbiology background, zoology or biochemistry, but how to use that knowledge further to the next level and enhance the skill, That is most important. Now, being in the university system, what we do, that research related to, as everybody said, as per the norms and so and so. But we never go to the industry, and industry never comes to the academia, because industry always think academic, they do all academic research, they doesn't do applied research. But we have best of the examples in our city only. You can say ICT. All research is driven by the industry there, or IITs and IIMs. So why, how come they have reached to that level? That is very important. So value addition, skills, industry needs. So I normally suggest my faculties to go to the industry. They may not give immediately some funding to you for doing research, but understand what problem they have. Interact with their scientists, their management, and whether you can do some smallest part of their assignment, that is to begin with. That will help to bring the funds from the industry. Universities normally they fund, we also fund a lot of seed fund we give to develop basic database, and from there they can get funding from the other funding agencies. That is nowadays every university is adopting. But until and unless industry, that a major stakeholder comes in picture, it is very difficult to do translational research for these scientists or professors. Now, second part, that after skilling, that is the funds now. Normally, again, we think how a botany person can do work in the cell sciences, or how can a doctor can do, a medical fraternity can do something on electronics or electricals. You see today, all the medical equipments are coming from abroad. Most of them, whether it is a smallest physiotherapy equipment also, sir, or smallest stethoscope, or even oxygen sensor also comes from the abroad. But we have all discipline specific, but we do not come together. Now, this is the good platform. Again, I'm saying, I said some time back, all the different skill people should come together, work on a specific problem as per industry requirement, as per the market need, as per societal need, and that definitely becomes a transnational work. Now, ethics has been said. I'll tell you one example of live, if given permission to me. During COVID, in first phase itself, I developed an electronic battery operated mask. We all were using the masks, which were for aerosol purpose. They were not for viral or bacterial protection. The cost was 45 rupees to 1200. I took special permission. I went to the lab. I brought special people. As a biologist, I could do testing and everything. We developed it. But I needed electrical help, electronic help. And my engineers were not ready to come. There are many reasons to. But finally, I collaborated with the industry and we developed it. We developed, but my ethics was saying it should not be more than 200. Because I wanted it should reach to maximum people. But technology or transport to such a company, they were saying we'll sell only at 1200 rupees. So why people will buy it at the cost of 1200? So here sometimes ethics also kill the product, the technology. It cannot go to the market. So these are the things everybody has to take into consideration when planning your work. That is what I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll take about 3 minutes to quickly sum up and then open the floor up for questions and answers from our audiences. I'd first like to reflect on the points Dr. Agarwal and Dr. Saxena made by saying that when I first went to the University of Oxford, I was 22, I realized that there was no Oxford University. You had to be a part of a college to be able to study at Oxford University. You could belong to theology, sciences, whatever it is. The fun part was, dining in the hall where they filmed Harry Potter. But you had to talk to scientists and social scientists and students from business over dinner. And that's what characterized the greatness of the education we received there. After finishing up at Oxford, I had the privilege to go to the University of Chicago. And there I noticed they had a department of big problems. That's what the department was called, the Department of Big Problems. You can look it up. And that's where they dealt with some real-world problems that industry is facing, and they would rally around those problems, bringing people from different disciplines, social sciences, engineering, to see, hey, how can we solve this problem to create a product or a service that has tremendous value to people, right? The third question that I wanted to bring up is an example of a course that I heard was taught at Caltech, where a professor came who was supposed to teach a course in computer programming. And he came and he put the textbooks down and said that, hey, in this semester, you're supposed to learn all this, but this is how I'm going to teach you this. You are going to design a video game. And we're going to bring people together to come for an expo where they are going to play your game and grade you, and the public will decide what your grade is. Whatever knowledge you need to make that video game are in these books. If you get stuck, come ask me. You're free, make the video game, good luck. Right? So that's a solution-driven research and teaching, and the kids had a lot of fun. And you spoke about the Cambridge system. I think that in all of these, Achala ma'am talked about the UGC regulations. And I don't want to endorse an individual here, but I heard a quote from Osho once, who said, creativity is the ultimate act of rebellion. And so if there are rules, let's get creative. I want to stop there. I thank you for your patience and your involvement. And I'd like to open the floor up for questions for the next about 7 minutes, and then we'll conclude this session today morning. So any questions from our audiences? Yes. Can we have the microphone here, please? All the microphones are here. Okay.
I thought I'll get it started, and it's more of a, it was a wonderful conversation, and I was more thinking about how do we as a university design processes and even buildings to foster intercultural discussions, etc. And you talked about Oxford, but about 6 months ago I visited O.P. Jindal University in up north. And they have an 11-story building where they house 1,200 faculty, and it is not divided by any faculty. So a law professor could be sitting with a professor of biology, and so we have in our backyard, so to speak, an interesting example of how an university is designed to foster this kind of discussion. The second thing, and I'm going back now 40 years ago, and I did my PhD where in University of Adelaide, we had a process where there was a morning coffee culture at 11:15 and a Friday evening pub culture where all the faculties, technicians, and graduate students had to attend that. And the philosophy was that this is not just about beer drinking, this is not just about drinking tea, this is actually where cross, expertise discussions happen. So I think, we need to think in terms of how do you set up processes within our departments, within our schools to foster this. Lastly, my question to you is, I'm also coming back, like Achala, into the academic world after 30, 35 years. And one of the things I've noticed is that PhD topics are defined too narrowly now, right? You talked about how we are not even picking up problems from industry. Forget industry. I think within discipline, we are, defining it so narrowly that it almost does not allow for any kind of even thinking about collaboration. And of course, I remember my time, and I'm thinking of my fellow PhD student who was sharing the cabin with me, Peter Coombe, who was working on the problem of do insects perceive vision? Perceive color, not vision, perceive color. And out of the 4.5 years that he did his PhD, for 2 years he was in physics department trying to come up with pure spectral light, because you can't really answer the question of does an organism perceive color unless you have pure spectral wave, for which he was a biologist, but he spent 2 years in the physics department. So by defining problems, PhD problems the right way, I think we can really get our students to start going out and actually not limit their solutions and problems to within the department. So I thought I'll just share a couple of these thoughts.
Regarding the research and publication ethics, many research students are here. Last 2 years, we are coordinating these research and publication ethics. The beginning itself, students were asking that what is this research and publication? Because the research methodology is the one that which is necessary for all the students. But I found that we both the years and each semester we teach this research methodology, and students, PhD students, can report that this is a very essential part, and they enjoyed all the lectures. That I wanted to bring to the notice of the panelists. Thank you.
One comment at the back. Yes. Can we pass the microphone,
Um, Thank you for an insightful talk. I'm a PhD student. I had the question, interdisciplinary research widens the scope of research and also the complexity of the methodology that you apply to the research. And what I found in my journey is that there is lack of awareness of the methodologies from different disciplines, and sometimes that creates a problem. So how can we get a common platform wherein methodology of philosophy or methodology of science or humanities can come on one platform? Even in this 3 days ARM, I found that everyone spoke about what they are doing, but there was very less discussion on how they are doing, what is the methodology because of the time constraint. So I think we need more workshops related to understanding different interdisciplinary methodologies to get more awareness. Thank you. If you can elaborate or help.
Thank you. Excellent point. In the interest of time, we'll just take one more comment. And we don't have the time for more conversation. I wish we did. But
so I just want to appreciate the panel's deliberation on this lack of interdisciplinary dialogues. I just want to say that my question again centering on what Professor Raman was saying, that how do we bring about these interdisciplinary interactions? I think we need to slow down in this age of technology. I was just reading about the slow hour being practiced by one of the universities, where for 1 hour every day, they declare that it is a slow hour where everybody just shuts down their laptops, doesn't look at any email, don't look at their phone. They just come out of their rooms and they exchange ideas. And I think if we do it with the students as well as the faculty, to have it in our systems, to have a slow hour, at least almost, on a weekly basis or maybe twice or thrice, I think this is where we need to put our foot down and say this is a slow hour.
thank you. I just have 1 minute left. One last, okay.
Before Mike reaches to her, I will say something. Just a minute. I think what he said, how to bring this kind of culture in the university, I think this is the right platform. Everybody knows what different student researchers and departments are doing in our university. So now we should freely start interacting with each other, try to understand. See, being a student of engineering did not be knowing agriculture. So now we have a course called MTech in Agriculture, Science and Technology. They have done great job being an electronic engineer, and they have developed a curriculum. Now, being a biological science student, I have done some value addition in it. So this way, we can all come together now. We know which are the specialties, what kind of work they are doing, and if we join hands together, right, this is a good beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to quickly conclude by saying we have a new building coming up, Sanskriti. The basement is a meditation hall. So we are going to have a slow hour here coming up. Thank you to all our...
One last.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you. I think we all have been benefited with your thought-provoking suggestions and ideas. And we know that we have to move, if we are moving forward, we have to think about multidisciplinary research and teaching both. And that will obviously bring the new pathways. I'm also, suggesting or contemplating a new idea when we're doing doctoral research or PhD research. We're talking about multidisciplinary. So is it really necessary that only one doctoral student come up with a thesis? Can we have a collaboration where 2 doctoral students or 3 doctoral students are working together from different streams and produce one common thesis? Is it acceptable to university? Is it acceptable to UGC? That's my question.
That question is actually for Professor Narayan Khedkar. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. A very big hand to all of our panelists, especially our guests who have taken the time out to be with us here today morning. And thanks to all of you for being here. I hope you had a great time. Thank you. Thank you.
We are indeed grateful to our chair and moderator, Professor Abhishek Ghosh, and our esteemed panelists for contributing their valuable insights to this discussion. We also thank the audience for engaging in a very active discussion, making this a panel discussion even more meaningful. To extend our heartfelt gratitude to the panelists, I request Professor Raman Ramchandran to felicitate Professor Rajan Saxena. I now request Professor Umesh Shukrande to felicitate Professor Vivek Agarwal. Sorry, Shukrande, sorry. We would like to inform you that this is a very special shawl that is made by our artists. Thank you. I would now like to invite our GRF students to felicitate our internal panelist, Dr. Achla Danet. Professor Nitin Desai. And Professor Abhishek Ghosh.